We seem to have a quorum, so I think we can start whenever you're ready.
Okay. In compliance with the notification requirements of Ohio Open Meeting Law, under COVID-19 emergency declarations, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to the Roberts Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from the vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raised hand function before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand function can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and to be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We also are utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. We'd like to call the July 22nd, 2021 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Ms. Bailey.
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi.
Here.
Mr. Collicchia.
Here.
Director Collier. Mr. Dreyer.
Here.
Councilman Jones. Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik. Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined today by staff members Carl Brunges, who is our host, Ava Schmidt, our AmeriCorps member, and Kevin Roberts from the Law Department. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Landmarks meeting. It's nice to see everyone, even though it's virtual, as always. We will start with our certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with the church roof replacement located at 8201-15 St. Clair Avenue. Will the applicant please use the raise hand function to identify yourself, unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bill Garvey. I am working on a motion picture that is filming in Cleveland, which is interested in filming a scene at the church in question. The church roof is in really bad shape. It's been, for the most part of the last decade, vacant, and the roof is even older than that. So there are multiple roof leaks that have formed over the decade, and the interior has suffered because of it. So our proposal is to replace the existing clay tile roof with a asphalt shingle tile roof. Also fix the flat top tar roofs in order to get it up to code and make it safe so that it doesn't fall down. So this project is anticipating filming at the end of August, so time is of the essence. So we are looking to do this project at the end of July to do the replacement. It's a full tear off, replace the decking, flashing, any damaged wood underneath in the underlayment, and replace with an asphalt shingle tile. If you move to the next slide, I think that shows, yeah, some of the damage. So multiple areas of the roof, not just the peak, but where the bottom of the roof meets the superstructure of the building, the brick structure of the building. There are multiple massive holes where water's been seeping through. There's another slide, I think it's after this one, that has, there you go. So like just missing, large sections of roof. So all of this would be replaced. The decking would be replaced, the flashing surrounding it. So we're kind of at a unique situation here. So the foundation that owns the church does not have the resources to fix the roof. So it's one of the times in my job where I'm actually able to help the community and do something that will save this church from demolition. So we're happy to do it. It's going to cost probably in the neighborhood of $70,000 to do this roof. Are there any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to feedback. Before we move to the commission's questions, we'd like to hear from the local design review committee and their feedback first.
Madam Chair, this was reviewed by the East Boulevard Design Review Committee a couple of weeks ago. It was approved unanimously. They did make a recommendation that the replacement asphalt shingle match the shingle on the school building at the rear. That would be that was the only other recommendation that they had, but they approved the project as presented, and staff would just echo their recommendation to match as closely as possible the roof, the existing roof on the school building. There are a couple on your screen right now. There's a couple of choices they were looking at, and I believe staff would recommend the one to the left of the terracotta choice. We think that's the one that best matches the school building.
Okay, excellent. Questions or comments from the commission? There you go. Questions or comments from the commission?
Hi. I found my raised hand. I have a question to the architect. How much percentage of the slate is damaged that needed to be repaired?
Most of it. And the issue that we found is it's clay tile. So it's very brittle to begin with. So
Clay tile.
a lot of the leaks had migrated on the roof at a different spot. So much of the clay tile is already damaged, but then even in spots where there isn't clay tile damaged, there are holes underneath where the rainwater has eroded and moistened all the underlayment to the point where it would all have to be ripped off and replaced anyway. This is in as bad shape as you get. It's been sitting there for a decade without any sort of maintenance going on, and it's deteriorated beyond the point of saving. The other issue with clay tile is because it is so brittle, so even if there were sections that we wanted to keep that weren't necessarily damaged, just the fact that you're walking on top of them to replace other shingles inevitably causes some damage as well. And there's not much that can be done to, once it's gotten to this point, to really save a roof when it's in this condition.
So right now, if we go back to the plan, right now there's just one building. It's not several buildings or several locations. It's just one uniform roof. I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's
All
yeah,
right.
it's a typical sloped roof.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
And then in this,
Thank you.
sure, in this picture, the school is to the north, so just above where you see the 64 feet. That's the school building. So that was originally the elementary school that was attached to the church.
Okay.
So that's the existing asphalt shingle roof that is there that we would be matching.
All right. So that's the asphalt you're gonna be mashing. All right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, I believe you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's sad to see us lose another one of these beautiful clay tile roofs with a little bit of timely maintenance. At different intervals, this roof might have been still serviceable, but it's clearly too far gone at this point. I just want to mention, and this is more in reference for the future, there was a project done on the west side where they took the clay tiles from the side of the roof that was not visible from the street, and they used, the ones that were in good shape to replace clay tiles that were visible from the street on that one side, and then on the back side of the building, they just use asphalt fiberglass, but that's not really something that could be done here. And I think this roof is just too far gone anyway. I just wanted to reference that for the future. I had a question. Is any of that wonderful copper flashing and gutters still serviceable? Can they be retained, any of them? I mean, some of it I see is missing, but I'm just wondering if it's possible to retain some of that copper flashing. It's just beautiful, and I think it would, help retain the character, maintain the character of this lovely building.
The flashing from our last meeting, and forgive me, the roofing contractor wasn't available for our meeting today, but the flashing seemed to be too far gone as well. The copper flashing. Now the downspouts, they are going to try to reuse. That they seem to be in good enough shape that we could retain them. But the flashing would be replaced by similarly colored modern flashing. So we were discussing either a copper, but it was recommended that the green color that you see in this slide here, that light green color would be the one that we would use to mimic the copper look of the old copper.
So none of the flashing. I mean, even on along the rake, or I noticed some of it is missing. Some of it definitely looks damaged. But I was just wondering if some of it, especially in visual areas, could still be maintained.
Yeah, that question was asked last week, and the roofer's response was that it had been damaged to the point of no return. That said, I can go back to him and see if there's any way for any of it. But that was his assessment.
I would appreciate that. They'll have to probably be a little more careful in removing the clay tile in some of those areas, but it looks like some of it still looks serviceable, and if it could be retained, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Bonazi, any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question is just so I can cross all my T's and dot all my I's. Were you planning on keeping the gutters? Were those in salvageable condition? Because I'm looking through the photographs and they don't seem too far gone. So I was wondering, are you just changing the flashing and the drip edge, or is all the
Yes.
copper going? So the gutters will stay.
The gutters they were going to try to keep. So yes, they thought they were in good enough shape to keep.
Great, that's fabulous. And then as for my comment, the first is out to you as the applicant, is I just commend, taking on the, knowing that the owners can't do this and taking on that sort of like civic responsibility to give back to the community. I think that's just wonderful. And I agreed with Ms. Anderson. My first thought was like, oh, can we kind of like mix and match the tiles to get it back to where it goes? And I've just been scrolling through the photographs and there's no consistent place where you could even remotely do that. There's just problems all over at every single part of the roof. So I agree that going with the new roof is probably the best option to help save the building. You don't want to sacrifice the building just because of a roof, sadly, at the end of the day. And I think that the color choices that staff recommended will kind of really match with the texture and color that's there. So I'm happy to see the gutters stay, though. Those are some beautiful gutters.
Yeah.
So,
And honestly, so often, I mean, not every movie would do this, to be honest.
no,
It's a significant cost, and this is a unique situation. And I'm as part of the reason I do my job is I'm a history buff and an architecture buff, and so to be able to do this, trust me, I'm really thrilled about it too.
no, and I'm so happy to hear that. So thank you very much. That is all my questions and my comments.
Excellent. Well, you just stole the exact questions I had, and also to commend you for stepping up and taking care of this church, and as a result, helping the entire community. Giancarlo,
Thank you.
I believe you're next.
Yeah, I have quite a bit of experience with church roofs. I have a church, on East 33rd Street. And mine had some slate and ceramic tiles. They're usually heavy, so the structure is quite more powerful than a typical structure. So what happens as soon as they start leaking, there's going to be some sagging, and whatever's holding up the gutter system is spoiled in the back, so that you can't really rehang it. I mean, we had copper gutters, which we were able to save, but we had to create a whole new structure behind them to hold them in place correctly. So it's quite a job, and I'm very happy that you're taking it on. It's a very wonderful, noble cause. As you know, there's so many churches in Cleveland that are being torn down or seriously damaged, and the more we can save, the better, I think. But it's going to be a very challenging task.
Yeah.
Expecting surprises of all sorts. But
I'm sure.
good luck to you.
Great. Thank you, Giancarlo.
Thank you, Giancarlo. Mr. Brunges?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that we worked with the applicant from the beginning when he reached out to us, and we asked him to do his due diligence to check for the consideration for other materials, whether it be real clay tile or all that. And he did that, and they're doing cost and timing and based upon that information. And he was very willing to do all that. He did all the work. And I think that based upon all of that this was the choice that would be correct at this point. So, and we thank him for doing all that work for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I assume you've contacted the Cleveland Historical Society?
Is that separate from the Landmark Commission? Forgive me if my ignorance.
Oh, okay, no, it's, Catherine, it's a very,
Cleveland Restoration Society for
yeah,
the,
Restoration Society, yeah.
I have not.
Well,
if I
they
need
have
to, I-
available, they have a lot of potential advice, and they could mix, they've been very helpful in raising some funding, for such projects.
Mhm.
They have a main office, a beautiful brick building actually on Prospect.
Yeah, I've been in. You're right.
So I think we should talk to them.
Okay.
It may be helpful.
for their Sacred Landmark program. Is that what you're referring to, Giancarlo?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Ms. Anderson, I see your hand still up. Did you have additional questions or comments?
Yes, I did. I neglected to commend the applicant for taking on this project. This is a huge project. You don't even own the building, so, I have to hand it to you. You are really doing us a public service here. And I also, this is kind of an aside, but your roofer is going to be able to start at the end of this month?
Yeah, we've been working with him for a couple months now, so that he is ready to go.
Well, I'm really impressed. I signed a contract for a roof in June of 2020, and they didn't start until September. So I'm really impressed with this roofer to be able to get on it so quickly. So
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, as you know, a lot of roofers are not available, and we discovered that too. So,
right. Especially with all the rain we've been getting, there's a lot of people standing in line for a roof. So, hopefully they can actually make good on that commitment.
Yeah, this is a national company, but he's born and raised in Cleveland, so he kind of has an interest in saving this church as well. So,
And being an extra
for
on a
instance.
movie shoot might be nice too, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Any additional, Giancarlo, I see your hand is still up. Any additional questions, or was it
No,
just?
I'm sorry, I left it up, but, actually, I'd like to offer, maybe you could call me and if there's some things I could possibly help you with. You give me a call sometimes.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
And Mr. Pettit can supply you that information.
Actually, Giancarlo and I go way back. Right? I filmed at the church he was talking about, so we know each other.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. Well, I don't see any additional questions or comments. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the applicant's proposal here with the addition that they look into maintaining as much of the copper flashing and trim as they can. Try to do their best to maintain that. But yeah, I move that we approve.
I will second that.
Excellent. We have a motion and a second with the condition to explore maintaining as much of the existing copper flashing as possible, but trying to retain the gutters. If that changes, we just ask you to bring that back to staff, so we are aware of what the final determination is related to the gutters and the flashing.
Understood.
We have motion second. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Pettit, could you please call a roll and announce the results?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Excellent.
you very much.
Well, we look forward to seeing the roof replacement and, more importantly, beyond to your future movie.
Thank you so much. Really a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks. We'll now move on to our second applicant, located at 3402 West Boulevard, the Mooney residence roof replacement.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'm just here in my private capacity, but they sent it to me in my work email. So I've been trying to address this roof for 3 years now. When I first moved in, I knew there were problems with the roof, and I wanted to do a lot of construction on the house. And I brought over, it's a clay tile roof. Clay tile roofs last 75 to 100 years. This one's 80 some years old. It's reached the end of its life. And there's water been leaking since I bought the whole house in the ceiling. And then after then, for the past 3 years, it's leaks in my bedroom too when it rains. So I've done a lot of work on this house, about 150,000 I've invested so far, and it really hasn't appreciated the value at all when I got an appraisal. But the roof, it's all tied into these other projects, which I've been unable to proceed with because of the roof, because I need a new garage, but the garage roof has to match this. So I've been to the design review about the garage, but the roof has to match the house. And I can't even use my garage because of the plumbing. The water sits there, it doesn't exit. So I can't keep my car in the garage because it's always full of water because of the level. So I've been able to do that. But the first thing I did was dug around my house and replaced all the pipes around the house. So my driveway now is half gravel and has been for 2.5 years because I can't replace the driveway until you do the garage so that the sloping's correct. And additionally, in the backyard, I have no patio anymore, and I can't replace that till I get this roof issue settled, nor can I do the landscaping or other projects around the house. So, my garage building, everything's been on freeze for 3 years. So I brought in one contractor that I trust running and roofing, and I knew the historic district, and I thought, well, maybe we could fix this. And he thought so too for maybe 10 to 15,000. But he went up there 3 years ago, and he said, nope, it's too far gone. There were just bad repairs over the years. Too many are broken. There's areas you can't see that you can only see if you climb up top, but you can't walk on this roof because it's like glass. If you walk on it, you're going to break it. And so, he showed me in an area, one of the valleys, where it's just asphalt. It should be metal flashing this area, but it's not. Somebody went up there over the years and just ripped it out and put asphalt. So he says, it's too far gone. You're going to need a new roof. And so I asked him what it cost. He said, well, just for the house, over $100,000. And like the garage, he's like, maybe 25 just for the roof. So that's more than I paid for the house or more than it's worth. So I thought about doing other alternatives, and I originally had wanted to do a metal roof, but Landmarks told me I could not do a metal roof. So they suggested that I use this Brava product that's synthetic barrel tile. I called Brava, and there's one contractor in the whole county that installs that project that is trained and certified by them. And it's a large contractor, Westside Roofing. I started calling them in June of 18. I reached out to the Historical Society. They really had no useful information. They provided me one contractor that they thought might be able to repair it, Shaker Squares or something. They never returned any of my calls. So there's one contractor in the whole county that does this, that's certified. I called them eventually. They don't want to do the job. That's the bottom line. They came up, and I couldn't get him to come out and give me an estimate for a long time. Eventually, he just drove by, looked at the house, and emailed me an estimate for $46,000 without even talking to me or knowing what I wanted to have done. And when I talked to him, that cost went up significantly because I'm like, I don't just need the roof. I'm like, there's other problems I need to address because of the roof. I need new gutters. I need new downspouts. The chimneys need tuck pointing, and the clay tiles broken inside. And that's the problem with, if you look at my house, my dormers are yellow. The rest of my house is white. And that's because when they installed the aluminum siding on it 50, 60 years ago, nobody's been able to paint it because you'd have to rent a crane. If you had a ladder, you could do it in 20 minutes. But nobody's ever painted it, or nobody's ever fixed the chimney. I have a fireplace there I can't use because you'd have to fix the chimney and the clay liner. Well, for that, you would need a crane so that you could never touch the roof. And that makes it cost prohibitive. So I wanted all inclusive to fix this. After waiting 2 years, they said they would start last year, and they never did. And then eventually this year, they stopped returning my phone calls, stopped returning my emails. And we're going on 2.5 years. My roof is still leaking. So, all my neighbors are getting new roofs. There's not many there's about 200 homes in this West Boulevard Historic District. I didn't count, but I think there's only 5 or 6 of us with this clay tile roof, but they're all approaching the end of their life. I mean, we wish they could last longer, but to a certain degree, they just have only so much life in them. And, I explored it. I've done my due diligence. Other people in the district, I've noticed they get dimensional tile shingles because the building department doesn't catch us. So, even though I did not like this product that was suggested, because this synthetic, there's no roof in the district that is synthetic clay tile. And it's a new product. Its reliability is really unclear because it's so new. But even with metal roofs, there's nobody that has a metal roof. So at this point, I've had a leaky roof now for 3 years, and it comes into my bedroom, the water. It can't be fixed without removing the whole roof. And so that's why I'm here.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you
and the
for,
alternative was this dimensional tile. This was installed by this roofer at another house, a few houses away from me down the street, that had a clay tile roof. This was a clay tile roof. I knew the owners. They told me they needed a new roof. They applied to the building department. They were approved without landmarks. And this is what they installed. And they've since sold the house, moved to Vegas. Now young couples moved in for a couple of years, and they fixed up the house. So I wanted a roof that looks similar to theirs. I like the color. I like the design.
so just to clarify, is that what you're proposing?
Yes, yes. And this cost is, with everything I'm proposing, it's about 27,000, which is more. And I have a small house. It's only 1,200 square feet. It's not a big, grand, giant house. It's a ranch. But that's 27,000, which is infinitely more reasonable than the estimates I had for 125,000 to do a clay tile roof, which is worth more than I paid for my house a couple years ago.
Okay.
And right now, I also don't have downspouts on much of my house because when I replaced the drainage around there, I had to move the location of some of them for different reasons. And so a lot of my house, I don't have downspouts, and the water and the gutters don't work properly, so it just leaks. So this price includes fixing some of the intricate woodwork that's on my porch, which is the nicest feature of the house, the stone porch. And this is where I'm at after 3 years.
Okay, thank you for the presentation and update on where you are with your roof. Do we have feedback from the local committee?
Yes, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Clifton West Boulevard Design Review Committee 2 weeks ago. They approved the project as presented with a lot of regret. It's always regrettable when we lose an architectural feature like this from a house. But I think there's an understanding that it's always a challenge. These roofs are always a challenge. Mostly based on cost. The vote was 3-2, so it wasn't unanimous, but they did approve it as presented. And I would just point out that we have replaced clay tile roofs in this district prior to this with asphalt shingle. The one across the street that the same roofer did, was approved for permit without Landmarks Commission review. But it's, I would say that it's still a quality job and enhances the house over there. But just to sum up, there is a recommendation from the local committee to approve this.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to questions and comments from the commission. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I certainly understand the predicament that the applicant is in, and I commend him for committing the resources that he has to date to save this house and rehabilitate this house. And it's totally understandable that given the present value of the residential stock in this neighborhood, it's totally impractical to think that you could replace this clay tile roof with a like roof. So the alternative dimensional shingle and the color, I think it's totally appropriate and will look fine on this house. So I would be in favor of the applicant's choice here. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. And Carlo, did I hear that you had feedback also?
Well, I was just basically going to say the same thing that Robert just said, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think once the roof is replaced, in spite of the appraisal that you received, that house is worth substantially more than what you paid for it. Especially once the roof is replaced, it's worth more, substantially more. So, you know, I wouldn't put much credence in whatever that appraiser told you. And I had mentioned with the prior applicant, you know, about taking some of the good tiles from areas that you can't see from the street and trying to, you know, retain the look of the front of the house. It seems like this is sort of an emergency situation, though. I mean, I was living with a leaky roof, and you can't live with that, and it creates so much problems and deterioration on the interior of the house that it has to be addressed. So, you know, as frustrating as this is, I understand your dilemma, and you know, I think the priority here is to secure the house from the elements and, you know, replace the roof as soon as possible. I just hope you can find somebody who can get over there.
I will. They'll start in a week.
Okay. All right.
The guy lives down the street that does this. He's
All
been
right.
waiting. He could start in a week.
Okay, that's because we've had so much rain. I'm sure we're going to continue to have rain. You know, the ongoing deterioration is probably very stressful for you. So, you know, that's basically my comments. I'm glad that your roofer can start soon.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for that feedback. Ms. Bailey?
I have a comment. You know, I know landmarks, and you know, historically we would like to preserve in the historical area, and this is a residential, and sometimes we get to a point when the homeowner in a small home may or may not have the financial to financially pay for it. Sometimes I look at that, but when it gets to a point when the costs start going beyond the cost of how much the home costs, you know, sometimes you'll have to look at that, because it sounds like that the cost of replacing it, that the roof is beyond the cost of the home itself. So, you know, because of that, I don't have any problem with that.
Thank you, Ms. Carl, could you go back to the product itself that we're looking at? Could you what's the product or style of this asphalt roof? Okay, so it's a dimensional.
GAF Timberline.
Okay, I'm uncertaintied. My only feedback with here is that I understand, you know, especially in such a small house in an area that it does create a hardship when the roof replacement does start to become the major, you know, cost of the entire house or outweigh the costs of your current assessment of the house. My feedback would be, have you looked into any other shingles versus just your standard dimensional shingle? You know, there's other products out there that you might not obviously be a terracotta clay tile, but give it a look closer to a clay tile profile, you know, so that it, you know, is more reminiscent of what was originally there. Did you look into any other options, you know, related to it, or just the one product?
I don't believe what you're suggesting, that I know that it exists. I mean, I know that there is synthetic clay tile, which is plastic. It's a plastic roof. I investigated that. I investigated metal roof that sort of looks like that. I've seen alternatives other than fake slate, you know, the that looks like slate. I'm unaware of any product of any asphalt that looks like clay tile because it's dimensional. You know, the clay tile
Right.
has it. If you're saying,
Something
you
a
know,
little bit more dimensional, like a Grand Manor or a carriage house or other products that do provide a different profile to the asphalt shingle.
I'm uncertain what you're talking about. And to be honest, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm aware of dimensional tiles. I'm not aware of these products that you were talking about. I'm just unfamiliar.
Carl, I can't share, can I?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. That would just be my feedback. Oh, there we go. I got it. GAFs. I would encourage you to look into some of the other just profiles for asphalt. You know, obviously this is a very special house and that's what drew you to this house. And we understand that sometimes we have to change the approach to achieve, you know, the budget. But if there is a Mr. Bonazzi, do you have, I'm trying to pull one off right now. Oh, so there's like the
I did just look up Google Grand Manor tile, and I did, so now I see what you're talking about. I was unfamiliar with that.
right. GAF has their antiques or their Camelot 2 line. They have other lines that do provide even more of a dimension to it that is more uniform, like the terracotta tiles that you have up there. The Camelot 2 is the line, and the GAF manufacturer is, you know, one option that I'm quickly looking at. You know, just to try to maintain that very beautiful, you know, approach that this house is intended to have. So the material, I understand, you know, the direction sometimes we have to compromise, and it makes me sad to give up this on this house. But if we could explore a different line of GAF so that we find a better compromise in between the dimensional and what you're currently approaching would be my recommendation. Or my preference, I should say, and recommendation. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson and Ms. Bailey, I see your hands are still up. Did you have additional questions?
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, so the materials that you seeing, are you suggesting there may be a better material that could be inexpensive, but can be durable and it can last in a longer term? Is that what you're suggesting?
No, it's an
Compared to
asphalt
what we're
shingle.
seeing on the screen?
No, it's an asphalt shingle. It's by the same manufacturer, GAF. It's just a different style and line, you know, of the shingle that has a different profile than what, you know, the current standard dimensional shingle has. I mean, it's a very special house, and I just want to make sure it maintains its unique character. And sometimes by using an alternate versus the standard asphalt shingle, by making a small upgrade, you can have huge results.
So it's just the profile of the lines is what you suggestion.
Correct.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right. Okay. So maybe you can look at some other profiles. Okay. All right.
Right, because they have their timberline roofing shingles, they have their designer roof shingles, and then they have their 3-tab. We would not recommend a 3-tab. Currently, you're in standard timberline, but there are some options in the designer line, like specifically like the Camelot. It's a slate though, so that's it would just be interesting to see what the product looked like and if it would have a better, a similar look to the clay tile versus the dimensional. Mr. Strickland, or Mr. Bonesi, sorry, I skipped over you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the profile of the roof, just kind of looking at all the options that are from that manufacturer. I know, did you throw my name out when you were thinking of?
Yeah, because I know you usually are doing research in the background too, so.
So when it's funny because I had a Spanish revival project in when I was at school, and I was interested in I always like ordering products because when you say you're a student, they send you things for free. And I do know there is actually a metal roof panel that a company called Erie Metal Roofing Experts makes. And it's just, I have no clue how much this would cost, so you'd have to like see into it. But it's it's basically a metal panel that is then blasted and colored to look exactly like clay tiles, and they come in like panels like this size, which is, as we know, metal roofs are like the most durable roof ever. So that is just something I know exists. I'm not, as for the cost analysis of that and as for the value of the home, that is completely understandable. But I just wanted to give my information out there that I know of that product. But otherwise, I agree with the profile of the asphalt shingle roofs has to be, I think, looked into a little bit more. But that's about it. Oh, I do have one more thing. I do commend you, though, for putting up with your leaky roof for so long. A good friend of mine has a very leaky roof that he needs to fix too, and my house is leaking right now, so I commend you for putting up with this for so long. And not on behalf of the commission, but on behalf of myself, I'm sorry. So that's all my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bonesi. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in consideration of how we might formulate a motion with regard to this applicant's request, I just want to make sure we're clear. He's done a lot of investigation. There's always a concern about product lead time when it comes to proposing alternative products. I know he's investigated the availability of this product that we're proposing, but this, again, it's a long-term solution. This new roof will last upwards of 30 years. So there's no reason to rush into it. So I want to know if the applicant is open to the consideration of this upgrade to the higher.
No, the answer is no. I've waited 3 years to put a roof on. I wanted to put that metal roof on, he suggested, at a cost of $80,000. That was 3 years ago. At this point, my contract is ready to put on. I've had to deal with a leaky roof for 3 years. I'm not going to postpone this. I don't want to postpone this anymore and be told to put different products. This dimensional tile is what everybody has in my neighborhood. Every house that is clay tile that's had it removed, most of them don't go through landmarks. They just go through the building department. This is the product they use. This is the contractor that does it. I know he can start immediately to start going through other products and research. I've been through the ringer and have not been able to do anything to my house for 3 years. I have a gravel driveway I can't repair. I have a garage where where the water is in it all the time. It can't leak out because I can't repair it because of the roof. I have leaky roof all through my thing and into my bedroom, and I'm
Mr.
getting
Boone,
thrown in circles. This dimensional tile, I mean, I can talk to him if he does it readily. I don't know if he does it readily, has this in stock, or even has experience doing this. But I need a roof, and I know that you guys are well intentioned, but waiting 3 years for this process is
Mr. Mooney, this
onerous.
is the
It's
first time we've seen
burdensome.
this.
Pardon me?
Mr. Mooney, this is the first time that our commission has seen this.
That's the
So
first
do
time you have, but I've been going through Landmarks, Don Pettit, and Design Review, doing this research for 3 years. This is the first time I've made it here on this. That's what I'm
So
saying. So,
this is
you
our
want me to
first
go look
time.
at other products, it could delay my roof. Who knows to when? I don't know, I mean, I said a week. He said he could schedule me and get it done. I've watched my neighbors get $10,000 roofs. My one neighbor used this contractor. He laughed at me. It was $10,000, but yet mine's going to cost 27, or the alternatives over 100,000. I just want to put a roof on my house at this point. I would have done all this more due diligence had I been told in the past several years. But at this point, I mean, I don't want to, I want to get a roof on my house, and I want to do, it's the same roof what I'm proposing that everybody else has near me. Everybody has this roof.
Mr. Mooney, we understand and we're trying to be sympathetic of it, but you have to understand this is the first time we've seen this here as a commission. So we're not trying to hold up your process, and we appreciate your patience, but this is the first time we've seen it and able to give you any feedback beyond what you've received. So I think we are trying to be as sympathetic and open to it and give you options to explore to really meet what you're trying to do, is meet your timeline, protect your property, and have a beautiful building. So I think that's what we're trying to balance out here, is to meet all the different aspects. And we're not trying to delay you, but I think we're trying to also do our process. And this is the first time that we've been able to see it and comment on it. So I appreciate and understand your frustration. I think we're suggesting looking into these products, and if you can look into them, then that would be our recommendation, because obviously it meets, and it's the closest to what you currently have on this house.
Are you saying I have to come back again?
No, we're not.
I'll look
You'd bring
into
it back
and
to.
consider it. Yeah, I know. If it's just that, I'll look into it and consider it. Yes. I thought you might have to go through this whole process again.
No, we're trying to make this, we understand this is this is a process that everyone who, going through the city in all different aspects, this is what this, we understand the struggle of it from a homeowner and a commercial project. We get it. We're all trying to streamline this for you as much as related to our process here.
Okay.
Well, and let me just add that, Councilman, you've acknowledged that you were not familiar with these other products. We're trying to provide some advice that will serve to enhance the investment that you're making in your home. So it's not meant to be punitive. We're trying to help you.
I appreciate that. I just wish that would have been an alternative when I contacted Landmarks 2.5 years ago to suggest this could be a possibility. These ones that you're now suggesting today, because when I contacted Landmarks, that was not a possibility. These other ones, it had to be the plastic roof or the new clay tile roof. And I had a sample of the metal roof. They flat out told me no. So had I known about this years ago, I would have done my research and certainly pursued that. But yes, today's the first I'm hearing about it, and I'll certainly look into it. But I just don't want another roadblock of having to come back again when I'm right. I don't know if it's feasible, or the cost, or any of that.
So yeah, that's understood. But this will all help with how we actually draft the motion for consideration by the commission.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, those are our requirements, that you replace in kind versus replace with the most economical product. We understand sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't, based on the structure itself. But those are our black and white rules. So I think the staff was trying to meet those, but we understand the hardship, and can recognize and sort of highlights that we all need to be able to streamline this process sometimes for residential projects. And I think that's why you're on this agenda. Other questions or comments from the commission members?
Just to make the comment to the chairwoman's comment, Councilman, with the same product that you would like to use, if you will, could you, while we're looking at the photograph, as you can see the profile of the lines of the slate, the tile going in one direction, if it's possible, could you look at the same direction, the same material that you would like to install, so that same possible profile could be in the new material that you would like to install? If you can look at that. That way you can still duplicate that same direction of the line that is going of that tile that we're looking at right now in the photograph, in the new material that you want to put in. That's just a thought. Thank you.
Mr. Guarnesi, did you have additional questions or comments?
No, I just accidentally left that up. Sorry.
No problem. Mr. Pettit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out, it's always the policy of staff to advise homeowners to do their due diligence. It's never one thing or the other. It's never a hard no. I'm convinced that Mr. Mooney has done his due diligence. We did approve a roof across the street from him with a Grand Manor shingle, probably 10 or 15 years ago. Although it's an upgrade, you're never going to replicate the look of a clay tile roof with an asphalt product, in my opinion. The Grand Manor I think it's a good alternative. I think it's worth exploring. I did talk to the roofing company about it a couple of weeks ago, but I would just point out that there will be a cost upgrade from the one that's being proposed. I'd also point out that we just approved a roof on a church, which is a similar product to what's being proposed today. I just want to clarify that I regret the long process that Mr. Mooney's gone through, and I think we need to keep that in mind as we form a motion and take a vote today. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. And for Mr. Mooney's sake, I think it just highlights the need for additional staff within the Landmarks Commission department, because as we talk about in our budget hearings, this is an understaffed department that deals with hundreds of applications every day. So I think that you're experiencing what others do too, which is regretful, but a result of being understaffed in this, in my opinion, solely my opinion. But the department's understaffed to deal with the number of design, direction, plus application processes that they have to deal with daily. I'll get off my soapbox and ask if there's any additional questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Strickland?
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose a motion that the applicant's project be approved as presented, with the consideration of investigating the substitution of the Grand Manor or similar product be given consideration as an alternative. That's my motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Further discussion?
I have a comment. for Mr. Strickland's, when you say substitution, are you talking about substitution, another material? I just want to understand your comment.
That's that the applicant consider the use of the Grand Manor product as an alternative to the dimensional shingle that's proposed.
And can I clarify that, just if he's trying to stay within the GAF line, it's actually not Grand Manor, that's a CertainTeed product, but a designer shingle is probably the way I would state it, if you don't mind, Mr. Strickland.
That's,
Gives them flexibility.
I'll amend my motion to make it a more generic application of an alternative designer shingle.
Because there are 3 upgrades to the Timberline line within the GF manufacturer, and there is also the designer line that has a Camelot 2 product. So I think we're trying to give you that flexibility, Mr. Mooney, to provide a look that, some design upgrades that could help with the look. Any other further questions or comments? Okay, Mr. Pettit, are you clear on the motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I
could you please call? Oh, go ahead.
We have a motion to approve as presented with consideration of a substitute material, a designer shingle in the same product line as a potential alternative.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms.
Um,
Anderson.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, please call roll. You got it.
Thanks, sorry. Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Clicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Mooney, and I will we wish you the best of luck with your roof, and ask you for consideration related to staffing as we move forward, because this is an experience that we want to lessen for everyone.
I understand that, but of course, when we ask departments if they have everything they always say yes, and that's because they can't really speak honestly. So, of course, I think we're willing to fund that, but the direction has to come from the mayor being willing, the new mayor, whoever that may be, willing to staff, because we can appropriate whatever money we want. The mayor has to be willing to implement and do that. But I agree. I look at this and I don't know why some design reviews are run by CDCs and some not. That I think it's what you stated. It's a question of resources, right?
Right. So we're always looking for advocates, and we appreciate any assistance.
And I appreciate it. Thank you. And Don, I do think you're a good person. This is just very frustrating. Nothing personal. Thank you.
I understand. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman. We'll now move on to our third applicant, driveway and curb cut proposal located at 5602 Franklin Boulevard for the Mcpartlin residents.
Madam
The
Chair,
applicant, oh, go ahead.
I don't believe the applicant's here. We were hoping to get confirmation by now that they asked us to take this off the agenda because they wanted to substitute a new presentation today. We couldn't do that at such late notice. So I think we should table this to a future meeting, and we will work with the applicant to reschedule.
Okay, excellent. Would someone, do we need a motion to table? Or can we just table since there's no one here to address the proposal?
I will defer to our law representative, but I think essentially we have a request to take it off the agenda, so that may be enough to just move on. Kevin, do you have an opinion on this?
Secretary Pettit, I think that we have the opportunity, and it would it would pass, that we just in an abundance of caution and looking at a possible Robert's Rules of Order, let's go to the direction of a motion to table. Insofar as, we any delay in consideration, could be deemed at a later date an issue, and a motion would protect that.
Okay, so do we have a motion to table?
I'll put forward a motion to table this project due to the applicant not being here.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Excellent, thank you. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
There's a question to Mr. Robert. Isn't there a limit on when you table projects? Like, let's say we run into an issue on this project in the future, and we may want to table it when the owner does show up. Isn't there a number limit on tabling a project? I think we had this discussion before.
Ms. Bailey, I would just jump in. Our code holds us to a maximum of 60 days, I believe. And Kevin, I don't know if you can confirm that. We usually require the consent of the applicant to table, but in this case, they've asked us to take it off the agenda. I think that constitutes consent, in my opinion. There is a maximum amount of time. Thank you, Carl. It's actually 2 6-month periods. So we can table for a maximum of 6 months, or we can table to a date certain, and Mr. Roberts can confirm that, I hope.
Oh, and Secretary Pettit, absolutely. You said it precisely correct, that it really is a matter of time and not a matter of the number of motion. It's a 6 months window, and then also to confirm what Don mentioned is consent. We do need to have that by the applicant, and it is implicit. It's tacit consent that if the applicant indeed asks to have it removed from the agenda, that is certainly constructive consent. So your question is well taken, and it's a good exercise, right? And so let's look at the window of time more so than, do we blow, or do we use a motion unnecessarily? So we're all squared here, I think, under the rules.
Okay, so right now this motion is to remove it. It don't have nothing to do with tabling a project for the applicant. So this is separate. Okay. All right.
Well, it will. We're still concerned about the time in which a certificate of appropriateness is out there. But I think that from I don't know anything about this request, but it seems as if it's not a question of whether they want to move forward. It's a question of they want to reconfigure their presentation based on assuming new conditions, or maybe, hey, if GAF roofing line all of a sudden developed a new product, and somebody like Councilman Mooney found it and like, oh, wait a second, I want to step back and then I mean, we could see something like that, and I don't want to read too much into it. The applicant will be aware of this.
So
Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
if So we're motioning to remove it so that we're not tabling it and putting it under the 6-month window. Is that just to be clear for everyone, right?
That
So-
makes
I
sense.
don't understand it that way. I thought we were moving to table the project.
We've had applicants that haven't shown up and they basically just got removed from the agenda. I think
Right.
table is when we can't make a resolution with what they're bringing to the
Right.
table. Well, these people haven't even come to the table. They wanted their project to be removed, so I think we should vote to remove.
Well, we have a request to, and the request came this morning. So it's, I think we have the applicant's consent to take it off the agenda. And I don't want to split hairs either, but we have a motion on the table in a second. And I don't think we have to worry about the 60 or the 6-month period, because we will get this back on the agenda either at the next meeting or the second meeting in September. So we will get this back in a timely manner. I just think when we called the meeting to order today, it was still on the agenda. I haven't gotten firm confirmation from them in terms of an email, which I requested, but I think we're safe proceeding and acting on the motion on the table.
Okay. So the motion is to table, and we have a second to table, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that if that is what, since it was on the agenda, to formally move past this on the from the agenda, I guess Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Miss Anderson,
Yes.
Miss Bailey,
Yes,
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion to table passes. And thank you, Mr. Roberts, for your advice today.
Quite welcome, as always.
Just wanted to keep you on your toes, make sure you're get a chance to talk in the meeting. So
I enjoy it. So yeah, thanks.
oh, and apologize. Wait. So Carl, do you want to just state what you're saying in the chat to me?
Sure. Just procedurally following Robert's rules, when this comes back and anything that's been tabled, there would have to be a motion and a second to remove it from the table before you can act on it. So that's just procedural. So when they come back, you say, hey, we want to do this, then we're okay. Move to remove this item from the table, so then it can move forward. Because it technically remains tabled until it's removed from the table.
Learning something new every day. Okay, well, we will keep that in mind for the future. Excellent. So that concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We will move on to the concept plan reviews. We have one on our agenda today, and it is the renovation and adaptive reuse of the Brooklyn Masonic Temple located at 3804 Pearl Road. Would the applicant please use the raise hand function, unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jill Brandt from Brandt Architecture, and I'm working with Almaco Properties for the renovation and adaptive reuse of this project. We are proposing 26 residential units and 4 retail storefronts. And, our goal is to restore the best of this building and repair and replace the stuff that's not so great these days. The building has deteriorated a lot over the years. And so our goal today is to walk you through the project, what our intentions are, and the main goals are, we're going to be replacing the existing windows. We have some alterations to window sizes, a few additional windows we'd like to add, and then of course restoration of the storefront. We don't have a lot of information on the storefronts at this point in time, and we will be working with the storefront renovation program on that. So that will be, I'm sure you'll be seeing that soon enough. But to begin with, I'd like to just walk you through the existing project. So this is the existing exterior. We have Pearl Road. As you can see, the storefronts are in pretty bad shape. The existing windows are wood windows with no grills, and they're in really bad shape. Down Garden Street, we have on the front half of the building, again, the wood windows, and then we have these factory style metal windows and some former window openings that are now boarded up. And you can see there's lots of ductwork and junk and this stuff attached here. This is the south facade facing the McDonald's parking lot. It's kind of a blank wall here, which we'd like to add some windows, which we'll get into the details about. And as you can see on this interior side, well, actually on both sides, we have these shorter factory windows that we'd like to expand to match the height of the adjacent window, so it's a little more cohesive and better for residential living. We will be cleaning up this back area, will be a garden style courtyard for the residents. We're still waiting to find out if this is our fence or the McDonald's property fence. If it's ours, we'd like to clean it up and do something nice here. We do hope to have a gate or some sort of entryway here. But again, just makes it a more of a statement to it. If we go to the next page, please. This is the interior, and we were fortunate enough to have some photos taken in 2004 by a previous developer, and it shows what it was 15 years ago. We've had some damaged roofs, and you can see that's really trickled through and done a lot of damage to the plaster and the woodwork in this auditorium area. So unfortunately, there's really nothing to salvage. So we will be gutting this whole area. We're having some structural analysis of the framing. If we go to the next slide, please. This is the second level floor. Again, there's nothing really to salvage here, but just to show you kind of the state and the windows that we have existing. If we go to the next slide, please. And this is the upper level. This is what it once was. And we do have this element here that we'd like to salvage and find maybe a place in the lobby or some common space to reuse it. As you can see, we're getting some daylight in on our roof. And these are those high level windows that we'd like to lower. Go to the next slide, please. This is a typical storefront, which we will be, demoing out to be a white box condition. Any of these light fixtures that can be salvaged, again, those will be in a common space, hallway, locker room, or excuse me, laundry room. And then the storefronts will be updated as well. Next slide, please. This is the lobby. And actually, we're very happy that the lobby's really in fairly decent shape. We have these built-in wood cabinets, the coffered ceiling, the stairs are in good shape. So we'll be trying to salvage and restore as much of that as we can. Next slide, please. This is a typical apartment or office unit. Again, this is what it was in 2004. We'd like to get back to something close to that. This is where we're at now. So again, we'll be gutting everything. There's a lot of mold damage. The windows are in bad shape. Next slide, please. These are some elements that we would like to salvage. There are some beautiful doors that we could reuse. There's these funky lockers that have these tags that say Brooklyn on it. This really cool light fixture. This one's in a weird back hall, but again, this might be something that we'd like to reuse in the lobby area. I think we have 3 or 4 of those. Next slide, please. And this is just some details, looking again closer at the storefront in its current state. Obviously, this will restore and set and keep, fixing these doors. But this is probably closest to what was originally there and what we'll kind of use as our guide to how to restore this. And then this is showing the existing wood windows and the condition that they're in. They have to be replaced. And then this is again that back courtyard area that we'll get some cleanup. We'll add some doors, we'll add an awning here and here. And these are vinyl windows, which will be replaced. And then again, so this is hopefully a beautiful landscape garden and public space for that tenants. Next slide, please. So this is just a general schematic plan of how we hope to lay out the units. These are the ones where we'll have to add those taller windows. And then this is that blank wall along the McDonald's parking lot side where we would need to add a few windows. So go to the next slide, please. Just again showing all 3 floors. With the retail space here, we'll be adding some units on that behind them. We'll have access out here to that courtyard space, and then the existing doors down here and our main lobby here. Next slide, please. So this is looking at the elevations. Again, the front facade, really just replacing windows like for like. And then coming down that garden street. Same here, these are the 2 windows that we'll need to add. And then these are the windows that we will be enlarging. Because those existing windows on this whole portion of the building are the factory style windows, we felt it made sense to make them double hung to have a consistent look with the main part of the building. So again, coming around, this is the south facade, looking at the McDonald's parking lot, again, matching those windows. And then replacing these, as I discussed, on the garden side. And this is that first floor where we'll have a few entry doors and a little entry awning. The recommendation of the design board, again, was to be a modern interpretation of that front awning rather than trying to match it or make it look historic. Let's see what's the next slide. I think I have another. We did talk briefly with the design board about whether adding grills in the windows would make it, more pedestrian scale, more residential looking. And I think they all voted that because the original did not have grills, the renovation should not have grills. And the next slide. And so this is what we're proposing. We'd like to replace them with a vinyl double hung window with a wider sash. We felt that this was a pretty good approximation to what's the style or the look that was originally there. And these are some other ones that we've considered. We're still getting some pricing on them, but we know that you will probably have some thoughts and opinions. And then let's see the last slide. I think it's just, this is an example of another storefront that we renovated with Almaco Properties. Again, this is, we would keep the wood base. I think in this Masonic Hall, we've been talking about using storefront windows here rather than trying to repair and that wood. I think it's beyond salvage, but again, keeping the proportions that are original. I think that's the last slide. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Do we have feedback from the local committee?
Madam Chair, this was reviewed by the Near West Design Review Committee and approved. I don't have a report. Carl, you were at the meeting. Are you aware of any conditions that were part of that approval?
I don't, it was not having the grills in the windows because that was the main thing. I think they were looking at potentially some streetscape stuff as well on the Garden, I think it's Garden Avenue side. But yeah, generally they were in favor of it. And if they're going through storefront renovation for those storefronts, then that's going to get a fine tooth comb going over it as well. So that's it.
Okay, thank you. So just this is a concept / schematic review versus a final review. So we're just giving feedback. We're not voting on this. Questions or comments from the commission? Go ahead, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder if the applicant has considered an alternate material for the replacement windows rather than vinyl?
Oh, we are looking at pricing for the wood windows. I've not heard back from the client, what they've discovered on that. I think for the amount of, we have to replace all the roofs. There's some structural damage to that auditorium portion of the building. I think the vinyl might be something that they're leaning towards in terms of cost, and that's why we thought that the JELD-WEN was a good product and had that wider sash that lended itself to the historic, the original, rather than that thin line that you sometimes
Yeah,
find.
it's just that you look at a fiberglass
Okay,
product for the replacement windows in addition to the aluminum clad wood as opposed to vinyl. And of course, things have evolved in terms of the quality of vinyl windows. There's several different classes essentially of replacement windows. My experience with JELD-WEN has not been very good.
oh, really? Okay,
Yeah. So, yeah, look at alternative manufacturers and I think you'd be
Materials.
well served looking into a fiberglass window as an alternative.
okay, thank you. Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about JELD-WEN, so that's interesting to hear, but I'll certainly take that back. We're open to, putting good products up here.
Thank you.
Well, and just to clarify, typically we do not approve vinyl as main elevations
Okay.
unless there's an extended circumstance. So because of the longevity of that product, so we highly encourage you to look at those alternate products at minimum for the front. Obviously, everyone would like to be a cohesive design, so we prefer to have it across the entire building. But echo what Mr. Strickland said, to look into alternate materials. Fiberglass is a good one, along with the aluminum clad wood.
Okay. Is the general profile that we were suggesting acceptable? Does that look pretty close to you guys?
Are you going for tax credits?
I think that's another one that they're still researching, the value of that.
Going through the tax credit project process will have they'll give you very much feedback related to the windows, but want it to match the existing profiles. So I think if
Okay.
the next time you come back, obviously if you can show us those profiles a little bit closer with versus in comparison to what you're proposing, that will help
Okay.
us with our final approval, and or if you decide to go through the tax credit process, that will be a requirement anyways.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So I guess our biggest question too, are there any objections to the concept of adding those windows on the south elevation or expanding the windows on that upper level of that auditorium as we were proposing? From a
Let's keep
historic-
going through the feedback from the commission, and we can answer that at the end if
Thank you.
it doesn't come up in the next comments and questions. Ms. Anderson, questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm okay with expanding the windows on the auditorium on the upper level. That's facing Garden Avenue, correct?
Mhm. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And on the, we'll call it the courtyard side, the south.
Yeah. I think as long as it's not facing Pearl, I think I'm okay with that. I want to applaud this applicant for taking on this project. This saddens me to see this building in this level of deterioration. It's a nice solid building, and it looks like the minute after they took those photos in 2004, they just neglected the building, neglected the roof. So I would imagine that even though there's probably hardwood floors on those upper levels, they're probably ruined by now by water. So they're probably not salvageable, but I also want to commend the applicant for striving to maintain some of these interior architectural features. I mean, so often everything just gets gutted and put in the dumpster. And it's nice that you're going to try to save some of these light fixtures, doors, cabinets, interesting trims. Again, I commend that. So it looks like a very exciting project. Nice to see this.
Thank you for that feedback. Ms. Bailey, questions or comments?
I was looking to where the windows expansion at the auditorium, and I'm looking at the upper left, where the new windows at. Is that where the auditorium expansion is?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I don't see any problem. I mean, he's doing a good job because it blends in with the rest of the windows. so he's doing a good job with that. The questions I have is, for the front, I can't tell, so are you keeping to the original canopy of the main entry?
Yes,
And are you doing any masonry work on the buildings, any damage or any tuck pointing or anything that needs to be done?
Yeah, I believe, yes, there is going to be some tuck pointing that needs to be done throughout. And then as far as and I think that's mostly just on the brick. I think the stuff around the door, I think is in okay shape. And yes, that awning we'd love to keep. Hopefully, we haven't taken too much of a deep dive into exactly the condition or how we're going to do that. But yeah, our goal would be to keep or restore that as it is, because it's kind of cool.
Okay. All right, well, I commend you for doing that, because it sounds like you not just only on the interior, you're trying to keep as many original existing artifacts in there, but it sounds like you're also trying to do the same thing on the exterior as well. So I commend you for doing that as well.
Thank you.
But I also agree with the windows. Try to look at alternative on the windows as far as the material other than vinyl.
Okay, thank you.
And Carl just did want to make sure we noted that the storefront renovation program will look at the building as a whole as well, not just those areas of window replacement. They'll look at every window replacement, and they may have some direction for the windows also. It's hard to say that the existing profile and the year proposed are close enough that we won't have issues, because each product will have a slightly different profile.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, well, I'll give my comments now. I think Ms. Bailey, your hand, okay, it just went down. I mean, I think what you're proposing is a fairly delicate or sensitive renovation related to where you are adding windows. So I don't personally have an objection to the window additions. I do like consistency, so I'm just one of those that in trying to make the new window sizes as close to the proportions of the existing windows is always preferable, so that it feels it doesn't feel foreign to the structure. And I'm just trying to look across where that auditorium, the window size related to the existing windows that are below. Correct, the center, the second floor windows and the first floor windows, those are original, is that correct?
Yes, so I think these are, the upper floor are a little bit taller than the second floor windows. So we'll be, we're maintaining that masonry width. We're just dropping down to match the sill of the existing third floor window. So we have a consistent line. So I think these are 4 panes. These are 3. And it's hard to tell what this one is. I think this one matches the upper level. These are the taller ones as well.
Okay, this picture helps. It was hard. I missed that the window, the small window on the end of the building is existing, and that's what you're matching.
Correct.
So I'm comfortable with that addition related to the structure. So I don't have any objections to what you're proposing at this time.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission or feedback? Ms. Bailey?
You mentioned about the courtyard. Do you have any landscape on this property?
Not yet, ma'am. They just closed on the building on Friday, I believe. So I have not yet received the site documents and the surveys and all that. They do, believe they bought the parking lot across the street as well. So that's sort of the next step for us, is to take a look at that courtyard space, get some landscaping, look at parking count. And again, move forward with more details with the construction drawings and look at that entry. We just want to make sure we're going in the right direction. So that coming soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Are there any additional questions or comments or feedback for the applicant? Does the applicant feel you've received clear feedback and direction from the commission so that you can continue your development in return for your final application?
Yes, yes, it sounds like no one has any objections to changing the window size on the upper level of the auditorium, adding the doors on the courtyard, or adding windows on that south elevation, provided they are consistent size with the front elevation and side elevations. So I think that allows us to further develop our plans and details and provide further information. And we will look at alternative window materials such as fiberglass or wood clad.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you guys very much for your time.
All right, well, thank you. We look forward to seeing you back in the near future.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. That concludes our concept reviews. We'll move on to landmark nominations. We have one on our agenda today. Carl and Don, would you like to take this over?
I'll just introduce this very quickly. This was brought to our attention by the Greater Collinwood Development Corporation, and Peggy Kersey is here today to speak to it. We know that Councilman Polensek is aware of the nomination. The building was nominated a couple times in the past, probably for the first time in the 1980s, but the legislation never went anywhere. I believe the building is currently up for sale, so there may be a new owner soon. And Carl has prepared a nomination and a history on the building, and I guess we should start with his presentation.
Thank you, Don. Slovenia is located in the southern Europe along Adriatic coast and to the east of Italy, and was once part of the Austria-Hungarian Empire and Yugoslavia. Slovenians began to settle in Cleveland in the 1880s with the heaviest immigration prior to the era before World War I. In the 1910 census, there were over 14,000 Slovenians in Cleveland, and that by the 1970s, 46,000 foreign-born or mixed parentage Slovenes in Cleveland, which largest of that ethnicity in the nation, I believe, even up in through the 90s and maybe possibly even currently today. The original settlement was in the Newburgh area, and then by the late 1880s, early 1890s, large community was settling along St. Clair Avenue. In early 1900s, they saw another sizable community appear in the Collinwood area in north into Euclid. Cleveland was experiencing unprecedented industrial growth, and that was attractive for immigrant groups from Eastern and Southern Europe seeking employment. There are other areas, Newburgh, Euclid, West Park, Maple Heights, and Garfield Heights were some of the places that they were settling. And you can see this large area was settled in the Waterloo district and Holmes Avenue districts. In the late 1890s and early 1900s, those had come to America realized they would probably not be returning home. So then they started putting down the roots, and this is when they started forming their national parishes, insurance companies, and trying to keep a little bit of their homeland alive here in America. In 1899, the first Slovene language newspaper was published in Cleveland. And in and around this time, also the increase in U.S. citizenship was applied for, especially during World War I. They would hold these cultural events at local halls, but eventually they decided they needed something larger. And so this is when the national homes started being developed. Collinwood was one of the larger settlements, and there were several Slovenian institutions in this neighborhood. The Workman's Home, there was also another Slovenian home on Holmes Avenue, Slovenian Home for the Aged on Neff Road, and St. Mary of the Assumption Roman Catholic Church on Holmes Avenue as well. So when they began to establish the Slovenian Workman's Home, first meetings were in 1914, and there were two separate groups that were fighting for where should this be, and that one group wanted it on Holmes Avenue and one wanted it on Waterloo. And they formed their committee in 1916, and they brought all the delegates together from the different lodges and clubs to do this. And they decided their first step was to raise the money. So then the committee organized the daily newspaper, and they helped promote the building of national homes in general, but they favored the Waterloo site. In 1919, the Singing Society Soka held a meeting at another site and said, we want the Holmes Avenue site, so we're splitting off, and the two groups went their separate ways. And that's why we have two separate national homes, one on Holmes Avenue and one here on Waterloo. The lodges that stayed with the Waterloo location formed the Waterloo Club, and they began raising money for the construction. August 5th, 1925, they start getting to the plans for the building, and you see different costs, but the one that we found was $86,700, adjusted for inflation, be $1.35 million today. The architect was local Alexander C. Wolf, who was also during this time part of the City Planning Commission, and he was an architect with the Cleveland Transit System during World War II. And luckily we had the 50th anniversary program, so they had a lot of these dates for us. So it made putting all this together a lot easier. And it officially opened on January 1st, 1927. There were a couple of additions of the public bar room in 1935, and then an addition of the bowling alleys in 1939. In 1945, Ladies of the Progressive Slovene Women of America Circle helped with the installation of the monument honoring the deceased war veterans, and it's one of the earliest World War II monuments in the country, I believe. And then in 1973, they purchased the property next door to tear down the house for parking. So the location of the building is on Waterloo and Shiloh Roads. You can see here, 1927, the original layout. And then over the years, it was used not just for Slovenian activities, but they would have boxing events and the bowling. And in the late 1960s into the early 70s, the bowling alley was converted into an archery range. And then there are I found different advertisements for some of the different businesses that were in the location over the years. So doing the research on this and seeing what was given prior to, this is currently the only historic photo I could find of the front of the building, and it raised actually an interesting question. It's a one-story structure, but yet currently there's a two-story structure there, and it looks, and when you see the photos of it, what it looks like, you would not know that it wasn't there. And then this is the bowling alley is put into the side. It's interesting to find this because, like I said, no known photographs right now. We're still looking, but we were able to find with that photo, let us look into the addition of the second story to that one-story building in 1947. And then that led to the discovery of the other, where the changes came in through the storefront and replaced with glass block and brick face. So what we have up to our current, how it looks today. These were pictures from 1989. This is back when it was originally considered. Although originally, and we'll get to it in a minute, is that you can see here, that's the monument. That was actually what was proposed originally for designation in 1974. There was a request to designate the monument on its own. And you can see the glass block windows and how that the alterations have occurred, but you can see it's one consistent face across here. We were able to find the original blueprints. So this is the building, two storefronts on one and one on the other. So it was not symmetrical when it was originally built. And glad to have these. So if there's ever a restoration in the future, we have these and we can say this is what it looks like. So we have a great guide. There are floor plans. I didn't include this in the presentation as well. And then here is the bowling alley edition. We did not find the one for the one-story edition, but that photo helps as well. It's interesting with the bowling alley, there were 8 alleys on the first floor, and then there was a dirt court in the basement for bocce. So the monument was unveiled in 1945. The Gold Star members, 14 members are killed in action. They are on the monument, and then had the names of 548 service members from the neighborhood that were listed on bronze plaques around the base of this. Unfortunately, in 1989, it was in pieces, and the bronze plaques had gone missing. Today, as it stands, the main base is not there. Don't know where that disappeared to, but that might be something to look into. And then the current conditions. And it's interesting knowing that the second floor was added later. You don't quite look at it, but you can see a slight difference in the color of the brick on that end, and you can see where the addition was. So for its significance, we look at different things. How is it significant? The Slovenian Workmen's Home is significant because of its ties to the Cleveland Slovenian community and the Eastern and Southern European immigrant groups that were so important to the settlement of the city, its architecture, and its importance to the neighborhood. One of the considerations, or two of the considerations we need to take into thought here is how are we going to name this in the legislation? There have been 2 names that have gone through consistently. It's either the Slovenian Workmen's Home or the Slovene Workmen's Home. And we may want to take some guidance on how we name that. And the other one was for the memorial. In 1989, there was some consideration for moving it. We've listed it here just because it's on the property, but there was the thought of moving it to a more appropriate location, which was Veterans Park, which is over by Lakeshore Boulevard, Nottingham Road, and East 174th. And if we designate the property as a whole, then we include that, and should we call that out specifically? Or if there is the possibility of it moving to Veterans Park in the future, that we also look at that as well. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Questions or comments from the commission? Well, I'll start. It's a very interesting project. I think it has a very interesting, history, and I just love understanding how, and now can see where the additions were put onto the building. Now that you've highlighted them, who owns this property?
Madam Chair, Peggy Kersey's here from Greater Collinwood. Maybe she can update us on the current status of the building.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair. It is currently owned. I apologize. I forget Patrick's last name. I work with him on a first name basis. He has owned it for the past several years, having purchased it to place his company in it. He found out this is 7 parcels on kind of the western area of Waterloo. He owns the 7 parcels. 4 of them are the actual building itself. Because of the size of his company, it didn't kind of work, as well as then last year with the pandemic, some things changed in his financial ability to be able to make those repairs. He has put it up on the block. We approached him through his broker to look at the property because we were being approached by developers, and we were misinformed, thinking it had been already landmarked. The councilman felt that it had been some years ago, and it wasn't until I contacted Ms. Pettit that I realized that it indeed had not fully gone through the legislative process. And a lot of the developers that are talking to the current buyer, they want to tear it down, frankly. They see the real estate as more valuable and want to put up modern housing there, which the neighborhood is quite opposed to. Just to the east side of 150, this is on the west side of 156. To the east side of 156 is really the music hub. Many of you are probably familiar with the Beachland Ballroom. Cindy Barber and the artist community that's there are really looking at protecting this structure for the feasibility of being able to do artistic productions and music productions, and seeing it as a full extension of what's going on Waterloo. And to lose this, I have to be honest, I was surprised. I didn't realize it was a 1-story building when it was constructed. None of the pictures we have go back that far. But to lose this, kind of the integrity, the architecture, as well as the history in this neighborhood would be devastating to us. The bocce courts are still intact. The bowling alleys are still there. The lanes have just been planked up so that they could use the alleys for the areas for storage. The kids set the pins, so the pin machines aren't there. So we're looking at somebody who will take the building in whole. There are a few people looking at it currently that want to keep the structure, fix the structure, and kind of take it back to the integrity that it was. Maybe retrofitting part of where the bowling alley is into something else if the bowling alley itself doesn't work. The kitchen downstairs is fully operational, and until just pre-pandemic, the Slovenian workers, the women's group of the Slovenian workers home, we're still using it to do fish fries and other outreach and dinners. So the capabilities and all of the integrity of the equipment down there is good, as well as the Rathskeller, which was the prohibition drinking area that still remains there. There is some things that need to be done. The current owner has kept up a lot of the mechanicals, but certainly in a building that's that large with not being used in the past few years, at least the last 18 months so because of the pandemic. He was using it at least once or twice a month to hold large gatherings, particularly for corporations. And obviously the pandemic stopped that. So there's peeling paint and some of the situations you get with a structure that's not properly heated and used. But there's nothing there that would stop this from being really brought up to be the beautiful building that it is and make it the asset that it should be. And that's why we're asking this committee to help us go forward with protecting this, so that we at least have one tool where we're working with folks who say, you know, they want to tear it down, and we can say, wait, we got to talk about that, and have some kind of impediment, because the neighborhood would not be happy at all.
Understand. So is the current owner on board with this designation?
He has not, yeah, I asked him, he was not one way or the other. I think because he's not planning on doing anything with it, he didn't have at that time kind of a desire. Now, the broker, I have talked to the broker, and who works through Howard Hanna, and he works a lot on historic buildings. He was surprised as well that this wasn't already put into landmarks, because all the buildings that he has worked on in the past have been landmarked. And so he thought that going into this, that this one would have been as well.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my question is relative to the monument. I wonder if Ms. Kersey could provide some insights as to whether the alternate site for that monument is viable, and whether or not we should include the monument within the landmark status for the structure.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I'm going to be honest. I thought perhaps that Mary Louise Jessic, who works for Councilman Polensek, would be on this call. Mary Louise Daly, she is our historic person in the Collinwood area, and she is the one that has the kind of the run of Veterans Park. While we do see this still in the parking lot today, I don't think the community itself would be opposed to moving it, to protecting it to Veterans Park, but I don't know of any. I'd have to get back to the committee. I'm not certain that there's been any conversation on that. Again, this kind of came up pretty quickly as this property was just set up on the, set up on the market.
I appreciate that answer, and I understand, that things might be in flux. But Don, can we configure this so that we propose landmarking the structure and landmarking the monument with a consideration that it might be moved to the Veterans Park?
I believe so. I think it's significant enough in its own right. It's on the property we'd be designating, so I think it should be included in the designation, but that would not preclude it from moving in the future. The commission would have to review and approve that move, but I think it's important enough to include it in the landmark designation of the building. I think it adds another level of significance to the property, but I also believe, it's important in its own right, and we could in the future approve a move of this to a more appropriate setting and location.
And does that consideration have to be included within our recommendation for landmark status? That
I don't think
could be moved?
I don't think it's necessary. It might give the future owner some comfort level in terms of their ability to maintain it on site, but we would have to. I think we'd have to think about how we want to draft the legislation, but in my opinion, I think it's worth including, and that way it would explicitly give us jurisdiction over reviewing the future location of this.
All right, thank you.
Giancarlo? Or I'm sorry, Carl, you're first.
Yes. There's no one from the Slovenian community that's been contacted regarding this matter. Are they?
We've been
Joy?
trying to reach, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We've been trying to reach out. We have not gotten anybody back. Unless I know Councilman Polensek has personally been reaching out to members of the community that he knew that were involved. My understanding is that there may have been some, I'm trying to wordsmith here, a little bit of bad blood between everyone that was involved in the Slovenian home and
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a split with the current owner.
Right.
So,
The owner of the property.
Yes, the owner that he bought it from, Packy Malley,
Mhm.
had let them continue and flourish throughout the hall, and then this current owner kind of weaned them out pretty quickly. But there are still, now the current owner has shown me, although we didn't look deep in it, there are still treasure troves of files in there that we would like to talk to him about getting for historical purposes, and get them back into the hands of the Slovenian community. We've also talked with the Slovenian community at homes, because that is still an active community that we use for meetings. So this, again, part of this is, and I apologize to the committee for being behind on this. This has been kind of a last minute as we are trying to go through this and save this, as well as some planning for some other development that's there on Waterloo, to protect the integrity of the community. But we're trying to tie up all these pieces and get there, to get them involved and to get them to help save not only the building, the memorial, but also anything that's integral in the records that are still left in the building.
Because I'm somewhat involved with the Slovenian community out in Madison on Lake County. They have a very large country complex, where they have gatherings and meetings, and they also.
AMLA?
Sorry?
Is that the AMLA site?
Yeah, on Grand Grove.
Yep.
Have you been there?
Been out there many times with the
Yeah.
thing.
So it's a great location. They also have some very substantial black granite monuments, to their history and culture, whatever. So that could be an interesting location to move that monument to. That's what I'm curious about, if there's been some contact with the community. But
I can certainly get that feedback to Mr. Pettit, and so that the committee would have further evidence about what our work is.
Okay.
So I will commit to doing that work in the next couple weeks to try to get those questions wrapped around and see. Again, we couldn't force them to move it at this moment under the current owner, I don't believe, but a strong suggestion, might be helpful as well.
Yeah. Also, I suppose if it's not owned by community members, then their voice is really kind of lost, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think the building is great. It should be preserved for sure. Thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have nothing else to say.
All right, excellent. Carl, you have questions or comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Mr. Pettit was saying about to Mr. Strickland. I think it's better when we write the legislation that we include all things, whether buildings or objects, into the wording, such like when we designate a church, it's on the property, but we've also called out like the rectory or the school or other things all together on one. So we are because there's sometimes that it's early where we have, it's designating this building, but it's designating these parcels, and then there's another building on one of the other parcels that hasn't been called out. So it's like, what's real? So if we're very specific and say, yes, we are recommending that the Slovenian Workman's Home and World War II monument for landmark status, then that's what we would say in the legislation. And then that way, when it does get time, if it gets time to move it, then like Mr. Pettit said, we would review that here and say, yes, it is appropriate to move it somewhere else.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Bailey, questions or comments?
Mr. Tracy, I have a question. By just having a kitchen and a bowling alley in here, does this facility sometimes be used by near a school around there with children, with like some fun activity in there during the daytime before a pandemic occur?
I'm not so much with the schools, but with the community. We do several events around the Walk on Waterloo, as well as a Waterloo Arts Fest. There are Waterloo other activities. But it is not too far away from Memorial and Elementary. And there is an art community that works with the children right here on Waterloo. So one of the things, for example, that we're looking at, reasons why, and I apologize, I'm just adding this now, but is in the main hall, it has an active stage that can do play productions. It's the only area it's the only stage in this area that's large enough to do play productions, and all of the facilities inside are still there to be able to do those. For instance, we also work with the LaSalle Theater, and that stage is not large enough to actually do massive play productions. It can do some things, but this facility is actually built for those kind of productions, and we are hoping, if we can save this, again, working with our larger art community, to be able to get more of the things that you're talking about as far as children's productions and all of that, because a lot of our schools aren't being built with those kind of facilities. And so then again, we see it as serving the larger community in a whole.
All right, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a recommendation for nomination?
I would like to put forward a recommendation for nomination. Basically, what Carl explained a few seconds ago seems like a perfect motion to make. Could you repeat that, Carl, please?
Recommending the Slovenian Workman's Home and World War II monument for landmark designation.
With the stipulation of the possibility of moving the monument.
I don't think you have to, I think you're just designating,
Okay,
you're just doing the nomination now.
yeah,
If in fact it does become a landmark and they want to move it later, it would still have to come through any regular process like any exterior change would for a landmark property.
okay. Is that a clear enough motion?
I believe so, Don.
Madam Chair, I have a question
Oh, sure.
relative to Ms. Kersey's comments with regard to the records that are currently present within the home. Do we need to add any stipulation that those be archived or some custodial status for those records so that those are preserved as well?
Yeah, I would add that to it as well.
I would just point out that technically we have no jurisdiction over those documents or any of the interior elements, but I think it would be appropriate for us to comment and make a recommendation that they be preserved and documented and made available for future historians and as well as the Slovenian community.
Yeah, I would agree. So if we could include that within Giancarlo's motion, I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion with related to the recommendation of nomination of the structure itself and the World War II monument, and along with that, the recommendation to preserve the existing documentation on the building and make it readily available for the future use. Does that summarize the motion?
I think it does, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so, and Bob, that's what you second?
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion to nominate passes unanimously.
Madam
Excellent.
Chair, committee, thank you so much for your help on this.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing this building restored in the future.
That is our hope.
That concludes our conceptual plan reviews. We'll move on to administrative reports.
Madam Chair, I just have one reminder for the commission that we have a site visit scheduled for Friday at noon at 7921 Lorraine Avenue. There's currently a demolition request from the county land bank, and that will be a site visit with members of the commission and the local design review committee. That's all I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or Carl, if you have anything to add to that.
I do not. Carl, anything from your side?
No, but thank you everyone if you were here on Tuesday for the Sherwin-Williams project. It was an interesting exercise to get everybody together and doing all that. So looking forward to the next two.
Yeah, we are too, Carl.
Well, Giancarlo, did you say something?
No, I was just wondering, are we adjourned?
I was gonna say, if there's nothing else, then I believe we are adjourned. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Bye.
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 Yeah.
See whoever's going tomorrow.
Yes. See you tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. See ya.